The sun hangs low over the neighborhood, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of Elm Ridge. For as long as Maya can remember, this has been her sanctuary, quiet, picturesque, a place where her family built a life from nothing. The smell of freshly cut grass mixes with the faint scent of vanilla candles burning inside her home. Everything is calm. Everything is normal. Maya stands on her porch, cradling a cup of iced tea, watching the soft sway of the trees. It's the perfect day. The kind of peaceful afternoon you get when everything in your world seems right. She takes a deep breath, looking around the neighborhood, a mix of newer families and older residents, their lives intertwined over the years like the oak trees lining the streets. It's a community, or at least it feels like it. Her house, though modest, is filled with love. Maya's mother, an immigrant who worked double shifts for years to give Maya the life she has now, has always told her that the key to happiness is to create a place of peace, no matter where you are. And for Maya, this home is that peace. That's why, this Saturday, she's hosting the birthday party of a lifetime. The backyard is a flurry of activity. There's the grill sizzling with ribs and burgers, the table laid out with pastel balloons and a banner that reads, "Happy Birthday, Maya." The sound of children laughing and playing in the pool is music to her ears. Everything is perfect, just as she envisioned. This is the life she's worked for, the life that feels just within reach. But then, just as quickly as the calm settles over the yard, there's a disturbance. A white SUV pulls up, and Maya watches as the car slows down in front of her house, the engine purring before it cuts off entirely. The woman who steps out of the vehicle is unmistakable. Tall, blonde, perfectly pressed clothes, the epitome of someone with money and status in this neighborhood. Mrs. Karen Willis. Maya tries to push aside the unsettling feeling crawling up her spine. Karen is the head of the HOA, and as much as she would like to avoid the woman, their interactions have always been cordial, or at least, they've been on Maya's end. Karen, though, is the type to always remind people of their place. Maya forces a smile, but Karen doesn't return it. Instead, she looks over the party with an air of disapproval. "Is this really necessary, Maya?" Karen's voice is loud enough for everyone to hear, though the kids continue to splash in the pool, oblivious. Maya's smile falters for a fraction of a second. "It's just a small gathering. Family and friends," she explains, trying to sound calm, but she can feel the tension creeping into her shoulders. It's not the first time Karen's been critical of her events. The woman has made no secret of her disdain for Maya's presence in the neighborhood, as if she didn't belong here in the first place. Karen's eyes narrow, scanning the backyard, judging every detail. "Well, I just hope you're aware of the HOA regulations. There's a noise ordinance, you know," she says, her words dripping with condescension. "And if I hear any complaints, you'll be hearing from me." She shoots a pointed look at the surrounding neighbors, who are now slowly turning their heads. The chill in the air thickens. Maya nods, her mind racing. This can't be happening right now. It's just a birthday party. But deep down, she knows this isn't about noise. It's about control. Karen's eyes glint with something darker, something more personal than just a regulation. Maya feels a flicker of unease, a whisper in the back of her mind. This small incident, this simple encounter, is a warning. Something bigger is coming. The day drags on, the laughter and music fading into a background hum as Maya tries to push the uncomfortable encounter with Karen to the back of her mind. But even as the sun sinks lower and the party continues, a knot forms in her stomach. Karen's disapproving look lingers, more oppressive than it should be. The kids are still splashing around, but Maya's eyes constantly dart back to her neighbors. No one says anything, but Maya feels their eyes on her. The whispers are subtle, but they're there, like a low buzz she can't quite shake. It's as if Karen's disapproval has infected the whole block, creating an invisible cloud of judgment that hangs over her. She forces herself to smile as she hands out drinks to her friends, but deep down, she knows this isn't just about noise complaints or a petty HOA rule. Later, when the sun has finally set and the last guests are trickling out, Maya leans against the porch railing, watching the flickering lights from the pool. The calm she had felt earlier is now a distant memory. She can't shake the feeling that something is coming, something worse than a mere complaint. A car pulls up again, but this time, it's not Karen. It's another neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, an older woman who lives a few doors down. Maya hasn't spoken much to her, but she knows her face, The kind of reserved politeness that comes with years of living in a place where certain people stick to their own. "Evening, Maya," Mrs. Johnson says, her smile stiff but cordial. She pauses, then leans in slightly, lowering her voice. "I just wanted to let you know that, well, there were a few complaints about the noise earlier." Maya's heart skips. Complaints? From who? Mrs. Johnson hesitates, her gaze flicking nervously toward the street, as if ensuring no one's watching. "I don't know. I thought you should know." She stands up straighter, suddenly tense. "I know how things can get. With, well, you know, the HOA's rules." Maya feels a chill run down her spine. She knows exactly what Mrs. Johnson means. The HOA. The one Karen controls with a cold, iron grip. Maya's stomach churns. She wants to question her, ask who complained, but Mrs. Johnson is already retreating toward her car, eyes avoiding Maya's. As she watches the car disappear into the night, Maya's suspicions grow. This isn't just about a noisy birthday party. Something's wrong here. Something bigger than just petty complaints. She feels a tightening in her chest, an awareness of the undercurrent of tension in the neighborhood she's always ignored. Then, it hits her, the whispers. The way Karen looked at her earlier, as if her very presence was an inconvenience. The subtle way the other neighbors, those who had always seemed so polite, began to distance themselves from her the moment Karen had shown up. Maya's phone buzzes. It's a message from her brother, Malik. "Hey, Maya, you hear about the HOA meeting tomorrow? Word is Karen's got something planned for your place. You might want to be ready." Her fingers tremble as she reads the message again, the weight of it settling into her bones. Karen isn't just watching from the sidelines. She's orchestrating something far more sinister than Maya could have imagined. But why? What did she do to deserve this? She's just a woman trying to live her life, trying to fit into a community that's supposed to be welcoming. Instead, she feels more like an outsider every day. The phone vibrates again, and this time, it's an email. The subject line reads, "HOA violation report, unapproved event." Maya's blood runs cold as she opens the email, reading the message from Karen. "Maya, we've received multiple complaints about your gathering today. As per HOA regulations, events such as yours require prior approval. You've violated these rules, and unless immediate steps are taken, I will be forced to escalate this matter." Maya slams the phone down onto the table, her heart racing. The weight of the violation sinks in. This isn't just a complaint. This is an attack. And it's personal. Her gaze drifts across the quiet street, the houses standing like silent sentinels, watching. The sense of unease in her chest deepens, the feeling that something is closing in, tightening its grip. She's not just fighting a rule. She's fighting an invisible barrier, a wall built with privilege, power, and the weight of racial bias that she can't quite prove but knows is there. And it's only just beginning. Maya's blood is boiling by the time she walks into the HOA office the next day. The building, an aging brick structure with dull green shutters, sits at the edge of the neighborhood. The lawn is immaculately kept, the grass perfectly trimmed as though it's trying to appear friendly. But Maya knows better now. It's a facade, much like the HOA itself. She steps inside, the cool air-conditioned air hitting her as the door closes behind her with a soft thud. The smell of stale coffee and paper hangs in the air. Karen is sitting behind the desk, looking far too pleased with herself as she scribbles something on a clipboard, her posture rigid and superior. Maya's hands curl into fists at her sides, her jaw set tight. "We need to talk," she says, her voice steady but sharp. "You can stop hiding behind rules you made up, Karen." Karen looks up, her lips curling into a thin smile, though it doesn't quite reach her eyes. "Maya, always so dramatic. What's this about now?" she asks, tapping her pen against the desk, eyes scanning the room with barely disguised contempt. "I've had enough of the complaints, Karen. I know what you're doing." Maya's voice is quieter now, but the anger behind it makes it sound dangerous. "You're trying to run me out of here." "Why? What did I do?" Karen leans back in her chair, crossing her arms with that smug air of entitlement that Maya has grown all too familiar with. "Maya, dear, you're overreacting," she says, her tone condescending. "I'm just enforcing the rules. It's what I do. But I understand if you're upset." I know how emotional people can get when they don't follow the proper channels. Maya takes a step forward, the words thick in her throat. This isn't about rules. It's about you trying to make me the problem. You're trying to paint me as the bad neighbor. Is it because of my skin? Because I'm not one of you? The question hangs heavy in the air, and for a moment, Maya thinks Karen might actually flinch. But Karen only smirks. You're being paranoid, Maya. Really? Karen's voice turns cold, dismissive. No one cares about your birthday party. What I care about is the disruption. And if you keep pushing back like this, you'll force my hand. Maya grits her teeth. Force her hand? She wants to scream that this is more than just a disruption. It's a targeted effort to tear her down. But Karen has already made her decision. Maya can see it in the way she sits, her shoulders stiff with a quiet sense of victory. It's personal. You don't scare me, Maya says, her voice louder now. I know what you're doing. I'm going to fight this. Karen laughs, a bitter, mocking sound that makes Maya's blood boil. Good luck with that. I'm the one with the power here, remember? You'll be the one facing consequences. Maya steps out of the office, the door closing behind her with a finality that feels like a door slamming shut on her peace. But she won't back down. Not now. She knows she needs to find a way to fight back. The first step is gathering evidence, something concrete she can use to expose Karen for what she really is. Karen's authority is built on manipulation, lies, and the privileged people who back her up. But Maya won't let that stop her. That night, she sits down at her kitchen table, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating her face as she combs through every HOA document she can find. She starts with the event regulations, digging through the rules and guidelines, looking for a loophole, a discrepancy, something she can use. As the hours slip by, she pulls up old emails, notices, and even a list of complaints that were filed against her. She finds nothing that supports Karen's claims, no mention of any violation, no formal request for an event to be approved in advance. Maya clicks open a new document and begins to type out a list of her own complaints. It's not just about this party, it's about everything. The petty complaints, the subtle microaggressions that have been thrown her way ever since she moved in. The way she's been ignored at neighborhood meetings. The way she's been subtly excluded from the community by people like Karen, who make it clear that someone like her doesn't belong. Her phone buzzes. It's a text from Malik. I got your back, sis. I know a lawyer who specializes in this stuff. I'll get them to help. Let's bring Karen down. Maya's heart races, but this time, it's with hope. She's not alone. Malik has connections. If she can get a lawyer on her side, maybe she can expose Karen's corruption. But it's not just about winning in court, it's about getting the truth out there. It's about making the people who've been complicit in this, the neighbors who've stayed silent, see what's really going on. The next day, she meets with the lawyer. His name is Derek, a no-nonsense man with a sharp suit and a sharper mind. As Maya recounts everything, he listens carefully, taking notes, his brow furrowed in thought. This is good, Derek says finally, his voice low and serious. We've got a case here, Maya. The HOA's rules are a mess. But Karen's been using those rules to target you. She's abused her power. And I think we can prove it. Maya feels a surge of relief, but also a deep sense of fear. It's getting real now. She's no longer just a woman throwing a party in her own backyard. She's up against an entire system, an entrenched hierarchy that sees her as a threat, someone who doesn't belong. But with Derek's help, Maya knows she has a chance. The battle is just beginning, but this time, she won't be fighting alone. The HOA meeting is packed tonight, standing room only. Maya can feel the weight of eyes on her as she steps into the room. The stark fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting harsh shadows across the faces of the neighborhood residents. She takes a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This isn't just about a birthday party anymore. This is about reclaiming her place in this community, about proving that she won't be silenced. Karen is sitting at the front, a smug smile already tugging at her lips as she sees Maya enter. She's clearly expecting a confrontation, a spectacle that will end with her victory. But Maya is determined to make this different. She won't let Karen have the satisfaction of thinking she can just walk over her. The board calls the meeting to order, and Maya waits her turn to speak, her palms sweaty. She's got the evidence she needs, the witness statements, the emails, the documentation. She's been preparing for this moment, and she won't let Karen get away with her lies. When Maya's name is called, she stands and steps to the front, her heart pounding in her chest. She glances around the room, meeting the eyes of several neighbors, some of whom have always avoided her, others who have been silent all along. This is it. This is her moment. Maya Williams, would you like to address the board? The chairperson asks, and the tone is as neutral as possible, but there's an undercurrent of judgment. It's clear they're already on Karen's side. Maya nods and clears her throat. Thank you, she says, her voice steady, despite the knot in her stomach. She takes a moment to compose herself, to let the silence stretch just long enough to build the tension. I'm here today because I'm tired of being bullied. I'm tired of being treated like an outsider in a community I've lived in for years. I'm tired of the lies and the unfair treatment, and I'm not going to stand by and let Karen— Excuse me, Maya, Karen interrupts, standing from her seat with a theatrical flair. This is a place for civility, not personal attacks. I'm sure you're upset, but we need to remember the rules of engagement here. Maya's blood simmers. The nerve of her. Karen, standing there, the image of smug entitlement, is the last person who should lecture anyone about civility. But Maya doesn't bite. She holds her ground, glancing briefly at Derek, who's sitting in the back, his gaze sharp. Karen's words hang in the air as she paces in front of the board. The issues here are clear. Maya has repeatedly disrupted the peace of this neighborhood. The event she planned was loud, overcrowded, and, frankly, disrespectful to the quiet nature of this community. I never asked for permission to host a small gathering, and I followed every rule. This isn't about a party, Maya replies, her voice growing more confident. This is about someone using their position to punish me. Karen has been targeting me from the start, and I can prove it. Maya opens her folder, carefully pulling out the stack of documents. She's got everything: emails, HOA guidelines, her correspondence with the board, and, most damning of all, the audio recordings of phone calls with Karen herself. She places the evidence on the table, allowing the room to see it. Karen's smile falters, but only for a fraction of a second. She quickly recovers, her eyes narrowing. This is ridiculous. You're going to try to bring the board into your little personal drama. But Maya doesn't flinch. She has everything lined up. No, Karen, Maya says, her voice growing cold. I'm here to show you for who you really are. She picks up one of the printed emails. Here's an email from Karen to the board, trying to paint me as a disruptive force. It's filled with half-truths and exaggerations. But that's not all. Maya's hand shakes slightly, but she keeps it steady. I also have records of Karen making derogatory comments about me, comments about my race, my background. She's using her position to intimidate me, to isolate me, and to make my life here unbearable. The room falls silent, the weight of Maya's words sinking in. Karen's face flushes red, her eyes darting nervously. She tries to speak, but her voice catches in her throat. I didn't, she starts, but Maya cuts her off. You don't get to lie anymore, Karen. Maya's voice is firm, unyielding. I've got witnesses, too. Mrs. Turner, you've seen Karen's behavior firsthand. Would you like to speak? Mrs. Turner, an elderly woman who has lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years, stands slowly. Her voice is shaky at first, but it strengthens as she speaks. I've been here long enough to know when things aren't right. Karen's always been difficult, but I didn't want to say anything. I didn't think it would matter. She looks at Maya, nodding. But when she started targeting you, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I've seen her make comments, treat you unfairly, and I can't stand by while she uses her position to hurt you. The room is still, every eye locked on Karen, who is visibly rattled now. She opens her mouth to protest, but the words don't come out. The walls she's built around herself begin to crumble. Maya doesn't give her a chance to recover. She stands tall, meeting the eyes of everyone in the room. This is a pattern of behavior, not an isolated incident. Karen has been abusing her power, and I'm not the only one she's hurt. We have the right to stand up against this. We have the right to demand fairness. She turns back to the board. You've seen the evidence. I've shown you who Karen really is. The question is, are you going to stand by while she continues to harm this community, or are you going to do the right thing? Karen stares at the board, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief, but no words escape. She can't even speak now. Her arrogance has been exposed for everyone to see. Maya's heart races, but she feels something else too: power. She's not just fighting for herself anymore. She's fighting for everyone in this room who's ever been silenced, dismissed, or ignored. The people she once feared are beginning to see the truth. Karen has no more words. The board looks around, some members avoiding eye contact with Karen. Finally, the chairperson speaks. "We'll review the evidence," they say, their voice strained. "But it seems we have some serious concerns about your actions, Karen." The room murmurs in agreement. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Maya feels like she might actually win. Maya stands in the center of the room, her heart racing, but she knows now that the battle has shifted. The board members sit in uncomfortable silence, glancing from the pile of documents in front of them to the tense standoff between Maya and Karen. It's clear that Karen's carefully constructed world is starting to unravel. She can no longer rely on her usual threats and manipulation. Her reign of power is beginning to crumble. Karen, however, refuses to back down. Her face is flushed with anger, her jaw clenched tightly as if she's fighting to keep her composure. "This is absurd," she snaps, voice shaking with barely contained fury. "I've been nothing but fair. This woman," she gestures to Maya with a dismissive flick of her hand, "is trying to tear this community apart with her lies." Maya stands her ground. She doesn't flinch. "You're the one who's been tearing this community apart, Karen. For months, you've been using your position to bully, manipulate, and intimidate people. You're not above the law, and you're not above the truth." For a moment, there's an unsettling quiet. The room feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for someone to make the next move. Maya knows that Karen is plotting something. She's desperate to regain control, but the cracks are starting to show. Karen's veneer of control is slipping, and in the back of the room, Derek leans forward, his eyes narrowing in concentration. "Karen, I think it's time we take a closer look at everything," Maya says calmly, her voice steady, but with an edge of finality. "The truth can't be hidden anymore. We've got the emails, the witnesses, the recordings, but there's one thing you didn't count on." Karen freezes. Her eyes narrow as she watches Maya's every move. "What are you talking about?" she demands, her voice laced with disbelief. Maya steps aside, motioning toward the large screen at the front of the room, where a security camera feed begins to play. The image is grainy at first, but it clears as the footage zooms in. Karen's face fills the screen. "2 days ago," Maya continues, "there was a disturbance at my home. I'm sure you remember the police being called." She glances at the room, ensuring every eye is on her, every breath held. "But what you don't know is that the HOA's security cameras were rolling. And I've got footage that shows exactly who was behind the escalation." The screen shows Karen, dressed in her usual spotless attire, approaching Maya's front porch. She's talking to someone off-camera, and the sound is barely audible. But as the footage continues, Maya's pulse quickens. There, clearly visible, is Karen, staring right at the camera as she hands something to the person beside her. It's a letter. A legal-looking letter. "That's right," Maya says, a small smile tugging at her lips as the room shifts, the murmurs growing louder. "Karen tried to have my house inspected under false pretenses. She was trying to set me up with false claims about my property. And I have the proof. The letter that she handed over wasn't a violation notice. It was an attempt to fabricate one." The room erupts into chaos. People start whispering, exchanging looks of shock and disbelief. Karen's face goes white, her eyes wide with panic. She stands up abruptly, knocking her chair back as she tries to regain her composure. "This isn't real. This is all fabricated. You can't." "Can't what?" Maya interrupts, her voice calm but dripping with authority. "You've been abusing your position, Karen. You've been using the HOA to harass people you don't like. And now, everyone here sees it for themselves. You've lied, manipulated, and threatened to get your way." The chairperson of the board, a middle-aged man who's remained largely silent throughout the proceedings, stands up, visibly shaken. "Is this true, Karen?" His voice cracks, and for the first time, it's clear that even he is losing faith in her. Did you really try to forge an inspection notice? Did you try to set her up? Karen's lips quiver as she opens and closes her mouth, but no words come out. She's trapped. The footage is undeniable, and now there's nowhere left for her to hide. She turns to the board, her eyes wild. You don't understand. This is all part of the plan. If we don't keep control, the neighborhood will fall apart. The values will drop. You've been using that excuse for years, Maya fires back, cutting her off. You've been using fear to control everyone. But the only thing you've been doing is destroying trust, destroying the very community you claim to protect. Maya feels the weight of the room's eyes on her now, their collective judgment weighing down on Karen. The walls are closing in, and Karen knows it. Her usual arrogance is gone, replaced by frantic desperation. She starts backing away, her hands trembling as she grabs for her purse, but it's too late. I won't stand for this, Karen shouts, but her voice shakes, no longer filled with the confident venom it once carried. I'll have you all removed. This is... Before she can finish, Derek stands up, walking to the front of the room. He's holding something in his hands, a small stack of documents. Actually, he says, his voice low but firm, I think we need to take this further. I've spoken to the authorities, and I've already filed a formal complaint against Karen. What she's done goes beyond HOA violations. It's criminal. Fraud, harassment, abuse of power, it's all in these reports. The room is silent now, the truth undeniable. Karen's face is ashen as she realizes what Derek is saying. The floodgates have opened, and there's no going back. Maya's heart races with satisfaction, but she's not done yet. She's come this far, and she won't let Karen escape so easily. Karen, you may have used your position to try to tear me down, Maya says, her voice cold and resolute. But this is where it ends. You're done. Karen stumbles back, her face contorted in disbelief, as the full weight of her actions begins to sink in. She turns to the board one last time, trying to salvage her dignity, but the room is already shifting. The people she's manipulated for years are finally seeing her for what she truly is. One by one, the board members begin to shake their heads, exchanging glances. The chairperson speaks first, his voice strained but resolute. We'll be holding a formal investigation, Karen, he says. This can't go on any longer. You've abused your position for far too long. It's time to face the consequences. Maya feels the weight of the moment settle in. She's done it. She's exposed Karen, revealed the truth to everyone, and in doing so, has made a powerful statement. The room is buzzing with conversation, but Maya's focus is clear. She stands tall, unshaken. Karen's empire of lies has collapsed. And justice has finally arrived. The police arrived less than an hour after the meeting ended, and when they escorted Karen out of the HOA office in handcuffs, it wasn't just a victory for Maya, it was a declaration. The smug woman who had terrorized this neighborhood for years, hiding behind her position, was now facing the consequences of her actions. Her world had crumbled, and it was spectacular to watch. Karen's face was a mask of disbelief as the officers led her toward their squad car. The crowd outside, which had gathered after the meeting adjourned, whispered in hushed tones. No one had expected this. Not the board members. Not the neighbors. And certainly not Karen herself. But the weight of her lies was too much to carry, and the truth had broken her. Maya watched from a distance, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. There was no joy in her heart, just a deep, weary satisfaction. Karen was a product of a system that had allowed people like her to thrive in the shadows, unchecked and untouchable. But now, for the first time in years, the system had cracked open, exposing the ugliness hidden beneath. She turned away from the scene, walking back toward her house, her heart pounding with an emotion she didn't expect. Relief. She was finally free of the constant weight that Karen had placed on her shoulders. As she walked down her street, a few neighbors stopped her. Mrs. Turner, the same woman who had testified against Karen in the meeting, approached her first. I never thought I'd see the day, she said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. You did something I couldn't. I was too scared. I thought it was too late. But you showed us all what it means to stand up. Maya smiled faintly, grateful for the support, but she didn't stop. "It wasn't just me," she said. "It was all of us. We all have a role to play in keeping this place safe, in making sure everyone has a voice." As she walked further, more people approached. Neighbors who had always kept their heads down, too afraid to speak out, now walked beside her, offering quiet but heartfelt words of appreciation. Each step felt heavier than the last, but in a way that felt like the weight was being lifted from her, not added. The people she had fought for, her community, her neighbors, were finally starting to see her, not as an outsider, not as an inconvenience, but as one of their own. By the time she reached her front door, the feeling of isolation had begun to fade. She wasn't just the woman who had been wronged anymore. She was the one who had stood tall and spoken the truth, even when it seemed impossible. She had faced down injustice, and won. Later that evening, as she sat alone in her living room, watching the evening news, a brief report flashed across the screen. Karen Walters, long-serving president of the Glenmore Hills HOA, was arrested today on charges of harassment, abuse of power, and fraud. Walters is accused of using her position to target minority residents of the community, including the recent attempted harassment of local homeowner Maya Williams, who exposed the corruption at a recent HOA meeting. The anchor's voice was distant, but Maya could hear the weight of those words. Targeting minority residents. Her name, spoken with such finality, echoed in the quiet of the room. She leaned back in her chair, the reality of everything hitting her like a wave. The anger, the fear, the injustice, it was all gone now. She had faced it head-on, and somehow, against all odds, she had triumphed. The neighborhood would never be the same. It would take time to heal, but the first step had been taken. The next day, as the sun rose over Glenmore Hills, a new feeling settled over the community. The streets were quieter. People greeted each other with more openness, more warmth. Conversations that had once been silent now felt more genuine. It wasn't just that Karen was gone, it was that, for the first time in years, the residents felt free. Free from the looming threat of someone who had used her power to manipulate, to bully, and to divide them. Maya looked out the window, the light spilling across the street. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her, a message from Derek. "You did it. We all did. The neighborhood is better for it." She smiled to herself, texting back, "We're just getting started." A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts, and she opened it to find Mrs. Turner standing there, a basket of freshly baked cookies in hand. The older woman smiled warmly, her eyes sparkling with an energy Maya hadn't seen before. "I thought you might need something to celebrate," Mrs. Turner said, her voice carrying a mix of affection and newfound strength. "You gave us all a reason to hope again." Maya took the basket with a grateful smile, her heart swelling with the feeling that she had truly changed something. No, everything. For the first time, the weight of racial injustice felt lighter. The neighborhood had witnessed a shift. They had seen her fight, seen the truth exposed, and seen the power of standing up for what was right. And, maybe more importantly, they had seen each other. Maya closed the door behind her, holding the basket tightly in her hands. Her heart was full. She had not only reclaimed her peace, she had helped give it back to the entire community. As the door clicked shut, she took a long breath, savoring the quiet. She had won. But this wasn't just about her. It was about everyone. The people who had been afraid to speak up, who had suffered in silence for too long. They were finally seeing what it meant to stand together. And that, for Maya, was the real victory. Justice had been served. And now, for the first time in a long time, the future seemed bright.